This is the Nash Villager Podcast. It's July 27th, 2026. On this date in 1915, something extraordinary happened. Nashville's mayor's office was basically dissolved due to a scandal involving money. The city was placed into receivership until the problems could be fixed and a new election held. And it wasn't the first time that kind of thing had happened here. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with context and backstory from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. I'm going to tell the 1915 story, but first, let's look at the mess that this city became after the Civil War. The military fighting was over, but squabbling was at a fever pitch. Men who'd fought for the Confederate Army had come back home, and they weren't allowed to vote or hold office. They were pretty salty about that. The governor was about as opposite from them as anyone could be. William Brownlow was a radical Republican who essentially made Tennessee a test ground for integrating formerly enslaved people into civic life and how to return a formerly rebellious state to the Union. As I'm sure you might assume, these wildly different points of view led to some very intense clashes. The man who became Nashville's mayor right after the war occupied more of a middle ground, but that didn't mean he was able to smooth things over. If anything, that just made for a three-sided battle over how things should work. And through this time, the state of Tennessee was essentially operating without a constitution. The one in place before the secession was considered null and void. A new constitutional convention hadn't been held. Technically, the area was still sort of under martial law. In 1867, the mayor and the governor got into such a fight over how the city's election should work that the governor called in federal troops and essentially was able to put his own choice of guy in office. And that new mayor, a man named Augustus Alden, was considered by many Nashvillians to be the dictionary definition of a carpetbagger. He was born in Maine. As an adult, he moved to Minnesota to try his hand as a mercantile salesman. He first arrived in Nashville as a Union soldier. He fought the battles at Shiloh, Stones River, and Chickamauga, and after the war, he decided to settle in Nashville, and then within a couple of years, he was the city's mayor. In that position, he started schools for black students. He oversaw the establishment of a charity hospital. We don't have a lot of evidence for what else he did as mayor, but we do have allegations. Namely, he was accused of stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from the city. Now, historian Robert McBride has pointed out that corruption was rampant at the time, and Mayor Alden was surrounded by shady people. Maybe Alden was guilty. Maybe he was not prepared to do the job properly, and that opened the door for other people to steal the money. Maybe things were exaggerated by people who were eager to get him out of office because he wasn't from here and because he started schools for black students and he offered charitable care to people they didn't think deserved it. Bottom line, in 1869, the people accusing him of wrongdoing were able to have his administration forced out of office in July, and the city was placed into receivership until an election could be held that September. By some accounts, it was the first time any incorporated local government in the U.S. was ever in that kind of position. To put the city on better financial footing, a bond was issued, and the wealthiest folks in the city, former rebels, were able to save the day by purchasing bonds. And because those former Confederates had just regained the right to vote, that election marked the end of the short run of radical Republican rule in this city. Alden left Nashville altogether. The second receivership crisis centered on a more homegrown character. Hillary Howes grew up in Rutherford County and moved to Nashville in the 1880s. He was a prominent voice in opposition to the ever-increasing call for prohibition laws. He was famously an advocate for the seedy drinking establishments in Printer's Alley and made no effort to hide how often he was a customer in those saloons himself. He ran a political machine that went the extra mile to cultivate the favor of black and poor white voters, sometimes paying the poll tax for people in order to eliminate that barrier to voting. As mayor, he oversaw the construction of Hume-Fogg High School, offered free health clinics in some of the city's most impoverished neighborhoods, and expanded the park system, including the addition of Hadley Park, the first park for Nashville's black residents. The city's elites really didn't like Howes. They didn't like the programs he started, and they didn't like the way he conducted business. They successfully moved to reorganize the way the city government worked with the adoption of a new city charter in 1913, only for Howes to again win re-election. And then they accused him of financial wrongdoing. Again, solid evidence is thin on the ground, but it is true that the government was racking up debt during the Howe's administration. And some of the city's accounting records went missing. Howe's and several members of council were forced out of office. The city government, again, went into receivership. But this time the ship didn't right itself so easily. The elites were in control, but once they had the power, they found they didn't agree with each other as much as they'd expected to. Back then, mayoral elections happened every other year, and none of the men who won the seat after Howe's were able to win re-election. The Tennessee Encyclopedia reports it was a time marked by chronic factionalism and spotty leadership. By 1923, Nashville was tired of giving them chances. Howe's was back in as mayor, and he held onto the seat for the next 15 years until he died in office in 1938. Now, not too many years ago, there was talk that Nashville might go into receivership again. That time was different because instead of people accusing the mayor of wrongdoing, it was the mayor himself that suggested the city was in a financial worst-case scenario. It was right before the pandemic in late 2019. The mayor at that time was John Cooper. He actually suggested multiple times in a speech to the Nashville Business Breakfast that the state had taken over metro finances, although he later walked those comments back to say he was trying to illustrate what could happen if the budget wasn't whipped into better shape. And that was a time when the state's auditors accused Nashville of overspending. And at that point, a couple of deals that were supposed to bring an influx of cash to the city coffers had died or were stuck in limbo. Things actually got even worse from there, thanks to COVID-19 and the tornado that devastated several neighborhoods in March of 2020. But ultimately, that time, Metro officials were able to fix the financial problems and make things even out without having to go to the drastic step of ousting leadership and installing a receiver. In just a few minutes, why new revelations about the training of AI music models hit close to home. That's coming up after the newscast.
Here's the mantra I think about at WPLN. We connect the dots. It captures a mindset that our journalism is not merely about the latest press release or proclamations by officials. Instead, we can develop expertise, dig deeper, and look to history to understand what's happening now. I'm Tony Gonzalez, news director. When I'm planning coverage and editing stories, the best part is being part of a team that's curious about our community and invested in its future.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. Attorneys for a death row inmate convinced the Tennessee Supreme Court to conduct an investigation into the state's lethal injection program, but it's not because of the recent failed execution. The Tennessee Department of Correction is scheduled to execute Krista Pike in September. She would be the first woman put to death in the state in 2 centuries. Her attorneys argue that Pike has been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress because of a lifelong history of sexual violence. They note that ahead of the execution, she would be transferred to the Riverbend Maximum Security Institution for 2 weeks. That's a male prison where the staff is predominantly male. Then the execution team would forcibly extract her from her cell, hold her down, and strap her to a gurney. The attorneys say this would re-traumatize her. The Tennessee Supreme Court agreed to appoint a special master to investigate whether this would be a violation of Pike's rights. The special master will also consider whether she's at risk of undergoing a cruel and unusual punishment because of her diagnosis with a blood disorder. It could make delivering a lethal injection particularly difficult. The special master will hold a multi-day hearing starting August 11th. The execution of Darrell Hines is scheduled for August 13th. Nashville voters are going to the polls early to make their voices heard, but with the new redistricting rules, some people are a little confused. Resident Denise Anderson says she's having trouble knowing what district she's in and who is representing her. She voted at the Southeast Branch Library, which used to be in District 5, but now is in District 4.
I'm in this district, but I didn't know because the district had changed. See, it's a confusion.
That confusion is motivating how some vote. That includes Emily McGrid, an independent who says she voted Democrat because the GOP redistricting effort makes no sense to her.
The only thing that we can do as a population is vote. And now they're trying to restrict and control how we do vote, and I'm not happy with that plan.
It's yet to be seen how voter turnout and election results will be affected by the new districts. A Tennessee congressman has said he would like to see a federal ban on flock cameras. Representative Tim Burchett has introduced legislation that would prohibit federal agencies from using the camera systems. According to WVLT in Knoxville, the bill would also outlaw federal dollars spent on the equipment. The cameras, which read license plates and collect other data, are frequently used by police departments in Middle Tennessee. Right now, Burchett's bill is in the beginning stages of legislation. It's been referred to the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. A lawsuit filed by a pair of national civil rights groups is challenging a Tennessee law that makes illegal immigration a state crime, something that's usually a civil offense. Will Darnell with member station WKMS reports the law has taken effect.
The suit filed by the ACLU and National Immigration Law Center pushes back on legislation proposed by Trump administration officials and passed by Tennessee Republicans as part of their so-called Immigration 2026 agenda. The law makes it a misdemeanor for illegal immigrants to remain in the volunteer state more than 90 days after being issued a final deportation notice. The crime is classified as a Class A offense, which carries the possibility of up to 1 year in jail and a maximum of $2,500 in fines for offenders. The lawsuit contends only the federal government can enforce immigration law. The Tennessee Lookout reports the suit is identical to one filed by the groups in June. A judge dismissed the first suit, saying the two plaintiffs would not be considered subject to arrest under the law, despite what their attorneys allege. I'm Will Darnell in Murray.
A Nashville judge has ordered the Tennessee Department of Correction to pick up 149 people being held in Davidson County's jails. Metro filed a complaint against TDOC earlier this year, arguing that its jails are housing people that should be in state custody. The city says this led to overcrowded jails, unsanitary conditions, and increased attacks on correctional officers. It also cost taxpayers millions of dollars. The Davidson County Sheriff's Office typically houses people awaiting trial. Those who are sentenced to 1 year or more in prison are supposed to be transferred to the state. TDOC must complete the transfer within 10 days of the July 24th court order. The Southwest Airlines Union is standing with a Nashville flight attendant detained by Immigration and Customs Enforcement. ICE agents arrested Lorenzo Thompson last week from Nashville International Airport. Thompson came to the U.S. from Jamaica in 2021 on a 6-month visa that immigration officials say has since expired. His friends and family say he had a valid work visa when he was detained. In the time since his arrest, Thompson has been moved from a detention center in Mason, Tennessee, to one in Mississippi, and could be moved to one in Louisiana, according to a GoFundMe set up to help pay his legal fees. Metro Nashville is acquiring 300 acres of forest land at Beeman Park to protect the land and expand one of the city's largest green spaces. The new land was formerly used for private hunting. It includes creeks, meadows, and portions of the Highland Rim Forest, and expands on the conservation mindset that first motivated community members to encourage creation of the park in the 1990s. Here's an archival clip of longtime Beeman supporter Nancy Dorman in 1999.
Do this because you're trying to take care of that little piece of green, and because when those people do come out, they're going to have an experience that's just like no other.
The project cost more than $6 million, with the money coming from a combination of the Conservation Fund, Metro, the Tennessee Heritage Conservation Trust Fund, and the namesake Beeman family. Mayor Freddie O'Connell said in a press release that the expansion isn't just about making the park bigger, it's also adding to a forest that helps cool the air and reduce illness. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. Musicians around the world recently expressed alarm at finding their music listed in sets of data that might have been used to train AI models.
It just hits different when you can search a database.
I didn't think this was going to happen to me. I just found out that my music has been
These
used
are the songs
to train
AI has chosen to take.
63 of my songs are being used.
A new search tool from the Atlantic Magazine's AI Watchdog project ignited the conversation. Senior music writer Julie Height saw Nashville-based digital strategist and songwriter Charles Alexander weigh in online, too. She asked him to explain the revelations and what's yet to be resolved.
To the best of my recollection, unless you work in this space, this was one of the first events where there really was a public-facing interface to what could possibly be used to train these models. I think it's natural if you are a creator and a writer and an artist and a musician to kind of go, oh my God, it's in this database, therefore it's been used.
The focus of the video that you shared was emphasizing there is a distinction between what songs are included in these data sets and what music is actually being used by which AI companies. Could you boil that difference down?
None of these companies have contested the fact that they've used publicly available data to train their models, but they haven't specified which publicly accessible data. Just because your music was found in these data sets, that didn't necessarily mean that those songs in those data sets were used to train AI models. And that's where I think the distinction is. If your music was used to train a commercial AI product, you have grounds to go after those people just from a copyright standpoint. But at the same time, you also need to be able to prove that that event occurred. And the proving part is where I think all this kind of craters, because attribution is difficult.
What do you think is the takeaway from that Atlantic piece and all of the discussion around it?
The larger story here for me is that if your music or your intellectual property or any kind of your content is online on a digital surface, it is open to being exploited. And so you want to be really careful about just clicking away and agreeing to every terms of service. You should read. You should read terms of services, even if they are 12 pages long, and then decide whether you're going to give permission.
Dirty computer breaking down.
What do you feel like are the difference in the aims or implications of the lawsuits that we've seen between the major labels and Suno and Udio and this lawsuit on the behalf of independent music makers, the class action suit?
I don't think this is news to anyone, but we have a long history of having competing interests fighting for the same thing. We're now at the point where we're sort of, as a culture and as a society, especially here in the United States, devaluing and commoditizing art. And then we want people to act differently after they've seen a pattern, like over a few years. I think creatives need more agency. For us, the biggest thing is consent, control, and compensation. If you don't want your stuff on any platform, you should have the ability to withdraw your intellectual property at any time. You should have the ability to control that intellectual property, and you need to be compensated.
Lawmakers seem to have moved slower on AI than the pace of a lot of these other developments. Tennessee did pass the Elvis Act in 2024, and the national version, the No Fakes Act, it finally seems to be moving forward. And you ended your video with a call to action, urging people to voice their support for the No Fakes Act. What difference do you think it would make if that law is in place nationally?
A thing to clarify about the No Fakes Act, that has more to do with your name, image, and likeness. The idea being if someone used AI to clone you and create digital deception, then the No Fakes Act has some teeth around it. It doesn't do a thing for training data. But here's the thing. I think we need a suite or a bundle of legislation. So we've already done the first one, which is the Take It Down Act, which is non-consensual images. It gives any platform 72 hours to take down any kind of infringing content. No fakes is the second step in that. We need the legislation to protect possible victims or really to go after the bad actors. Hopefully it gets through the House and it becomes law. And then that builds a runway for this third thing called the TRAIN Act. That will actually institute a legislative tool to go after training data that's been used to train models. It would compel the AI companies to sort of reveal what they've been using. I think it's important to make it known publicly that you're upset about this and that you're going to take some action. Empower your representatives to do the thing you want them to do, because this is going to take all sides. It's going to take legislative, it's going to take public legal work, it's going to take public pressure.
And I'll be covering those developments. For Nashville Public Radio, I'm Julie Height.
Robot Parade, Robot Parade, wave the flags that the robots made. Robot Parade.
Thanks for listening to the Nash Villager podcast. We take this look at Nashville news every weekday. If you like it, go ahead and subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and tell a friend or give us a mention on your socials. It really helps get the word out. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener supported. You can become a member at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.